This is a Regner Chaloner. I was steaming it yesterday at a friend's house, all gathering, and we had a slight incident, I don't know what you want to call it really. Anyway, cut a long story short, one of the little bolts that holds the connecting rod on came undone. Connecting rod dropped down onto the track. Bit of a leapfrog. I don't think there was any real damage done, but that was the end of running for that day. Never did find a bolt. What's sort of interesting about Regners, and I've got great respect for Regners, I really like them, but what's interesting about them is everything is soft soldered. The boiler, which I think is brass, soft soldered. The little spigot thing that got broken, that's soft soldered. So pretty universally soft soldered throughout, which sort of makes you wonder about all the bullshit of the boiler testing regulations in place by the Gauge 1 Association and 16mm and all the rest of it. It's just nonsense really. Mammods also, in my knowledge, are brass and all soft soldered. It's just ridiculous, the regulations. There's so little water in these things by and large. In my view there's virtually no risk. Not that I'd advocate poor workmanship. From what I've seen, the biggest blooming risk to these things is if you're stupid enough to look down the chimneys while they're actually in steam and you get a squirt or something. Won't kill you, but it blooming hurts. Don't ask me how I know that, by the way. Something occurred to me that might just be worth pointing out. A few modifications I made to this Regner Chaloner to make it look a little bit more like the prototype. I bought the model new, and I can't remember when, but maybe 10 or 15 years ago, can't quite remember. As a standard, it comes with that's the standard top, which just drops over the boiler, and it comes with what I always thought was a fairly strange looking arrangement. The exhaust from the cylinder, as a standard, discharges through a pipe into what passes for the water tank, and the exhaust then comes out of the blooming water tank. The water tank itself fills up with all sorts of horrible condensate, which I found quite troublesome to remove, but fundamentally, to my eye anyway, the whole thing looked a bit ridiculous. So a little bit of thought, and what I did, I completely made a new tank, which is actually completely watertight, and I'll come back to that in a minute. I removed the exhaust connection which used to come out of here into the old tank. I removed that from the motor and sent the exhaust in the opposite direction and made a new top works with the exhaust coming out of the chimney. I'll come back to that in a second. I also made and fitted a kind of, looking at photographs, a dummy safety valve arrangement. I did debate, this tank is watertight, and I did debate fitting a little axial pump to pump water into the boiler. I have to say, I've never quite found the enthusiasm as so far to actually do that. I'll show a bit more detail on these top works, and there is a note of caution about this modification in a minute. I also took off the standard Regner sort of 1 inch pressure gauge and fitted this small 1/2 inch gauge, which, if I'm candid, I promptly broke. It doesn't really work, it's cosmetic. Don't ask, but I broke it the minute I put it on. But anyway, but it looks much better than the original. I think I remember there used to be a hand wheel on here, and I removed that and made this arrangement here to kind of represent a sort of simulation of the brake that I'd seen on the prototype Chaloner. The other thing is my little man takes up quite a lot of room, so I actually turned the handle round. It used to point out this way. I turned it round to face that way to give clearance to operate when my little man's in there. I haven't quite stood him in at the moment, but that's where we are on that. One other minor silly thing really, or two silly things. I fitted some rivets on a couple of bits of half round something or other, don't ask me, I can't remember, to kind of simulate, it's the wrong diameter really, but to simulate the boiler, because on the prototype the boiler comes much lower than it does on the Regner, so to sort of simulate that. On the prototype the con rods aren't fluted, which they are on the Regner, but I simply found in swapping the con rods one side to the other, you get the plain side looking out, and therefore it's not a fluted rod. Please yourself about that one really. I also fitted some wooden buffer blocks to the rear of the frame, because from photographs I've got, that's what seems to be on the prototype. We'll now have a look at what's actually going on here. The steam exhaust connection from the motor unit to the top works to the exhaust is via a simple bit of black rubber tube. It does tend to deteriorate, but it costs absolutely nothing. Certainly lasts at least a year, and when it does deteriorate, well, I'll just put a new bit on really. That's what I do anyway. The top just lifts off as it does. That's the original Regner arrangement, and of course the exhaust used to come out of this tank, which used to sit there. So that has been replaced with my one. Now the Regner boiler has got 4 vertical tubes. This is a standard Regner boiler. It's got 4 vertical tubes. It's gas fired and the flue gases come out of there. And I can understand to some extent why Regner did not want to run the risk of the exhaust coming out over the boiler, and hence the reason they chose to take the exhaust into this tank and up out of the water tank. But I didn't have this machine very long before I decided I wasn't happy with that and decided to revise arrangements. So what I did, I made a new flat top arrangement which is more in line with the prototype, and what I did is within that new arrangement created an exhaust arrangement, and here it is, to come out of the chimney to mitigate against the possibility, and you really wouldn't want that, of condensate and whatnot somehow ending up down the fire tube on the burner, because you really don't want that to happen. What I did very carefully is to place the exhaust actually offset to one side of the chimney. And the other thing I was careful to do was actually to bring the exhaust up, not sticking out of the chimney, but close to the top. And for sure the majority of the condensate, on start-ups the worst problem, is just expelled clear of the locomotive. But anything that dribbles down, I don't know if this comes out, there is a catch plate here with a sort of lip on it, so any condensate that dribbles down the exhaust pipe does actually, you might just be able to see that, fetch up in the little catch plate at the bottom where it is instantly vaporised. And as I said, the exhaust, this exhaust is not actually above any of the fire tubes. It's about here somewhere. So again, any small condensate dribbles that got past the catch plate and whatnot, I guess must end up here, and of course when the thing's hot, instantly evaporated. This modification has been in place for, well, I don't know really, but well over 10 years, and it's done loads of running. And all I can truly say is I've never had any trouble. The key, if you're going to do this sort of thing, is to make sure the exhaust is disposed of in such a way that it can't end up down these tubes and thence onto the burner. You really wouldn't want that. So there you go. I just think it brings it more like the prototype. A bit like the prototype really. This bit here, I'm not going to do it, actually does hinge clear, because that's what used to happen on the prototype. And I made it to do that. It's a bit gash, and it does hinge. There's the hinge there. The only thing I forgot was, of course, if you did hinge it up, it won't pass my exhaust pipe, which I didn't make hinge. That's just fixed vertically. There's no reason to hinge the top at all really, and if I wanted to do it, I have to unscrew that exhaust pipe. So that only ever happened once, when I realised it wasn't a bright idea. I've never done it since, and I could have saved myself a bit of time by not faffing about making a hinge. But there you go, live and learn.